Forbidden love. Isabella Rossi adjusted the hem of her sleek black dress, the fabric hugging her slender figure perfectly. The grandeur of the Italian wedding she was attending reflected her family's status: lavish, elegant, and undoubtedly expensive. The sprawling villa was adorned with cascading floral arrangements in shades of white and gold, their fragrance mingling with the crisp evening air. Crystal chandeliers hung from towering ceilings, casting a warm, opulent glow over the sea of impeccably dressed guests. Outside, strings of fairy lights lined the cobblestone pathways, leading to a garden where fountains trickled softly, adding to the dreamy ambiance. It was a spectacle meant to awe and intimidate, a reminder of the Rossi family's power and influence. Yet, amidst the glamour, Isabella felt like an outsider. Her sapphire blue eyes scanned the room with a detached curiosity, yearning for a simplicity that felt worlds away. She had just graduated as a lawyer, a milestone she was immensely proud of. But with graduation came new pressures, ones she had dreaded for years. Her parents, especially her mother, were already dropping hints about marriage, their expectations for her to secure a union that would further the Rossi influence. The thought frustrated Isabella to no end. She was still single by choice, fiercely independent, and determined to carve out her own path despite her family's shadow, the infamous Rossi Mafia. Though her family's name carried power, Isabella had always avoided the limelight. She preferred the solace of books and courtrooms over the smoky back rooms where deals were struck and lives were changed with the flick of a pen or a whisper, rooms where loyalty and betrayal often blurred together. The Rossis and their counterparts lived by an unspoken code, one that dictated every move and every alliance. Tonight, however, she couldn't escape the family obligations. The wedding was a carefully orchestrated union of two prominent families, the Ferraris and the Lombardis, whose uneasy truce had been sealed with this marriage. The alliance promised stability and strength, but it also underscored the ever-present danger of their world, where alliances could turn into battlegrounds overnight, and the smallest misstep could ignite a war. Isabella couldn't help but feel like a pawn in this game, her independence constantly at odds with the expectations and risks of her lineage. The celebration was in full swing, guests dancing under the warm glow of chandeliers, the air filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. Isabella's gaze wandered, settling on a man she hadn't noticed before. He stood near the bar, his tailored suit emphasizing his broad shoulders. His jet-black hair was slightly tousled, and his sharp jawline framed a face that seemed carved by Michelangelo himself. But it was his eyes that held her attention, piercing and dark, with a glint of something unreadable. Her breath hitched, her chest tightening as if the very air around her had thickened. An unexpected warmth flushed her cheeks, spreading down her neck, and her fingers twitched slightly against the cool stem of her glass. She felt as though the world around her had dimmed, leaving only the intensity of his gaze, a force that both captivated and unnerved her. A shiver ran down her spine, not of fear, but of something far more profound and consuming. She felt an involuntary tightening in her chest, as if her body instinctively reacted to the intensity of his gaze. Her fingers brushed against the stem of her glass, gripping it just a little tighter as her pulse quickened. For a moment she was rooted to the spot, her confidence wavering under the weight of his stare. He caught her staring, a slow, almost predatory smile curving his lips, and he began making his way toward her. Isabella's heart raced, a mix of curiosity and caution flooding her senses. She straightened, trying to maintain an air of composure. "Buonasera," he greeted, his deep voice sending a shiver down her spine. "I couldn't help but notice you over here. You seem different from the rest." Isabella arched a brow, masking her intrigue. "Is that a compliment or an observation?" He chuckled, a rich, melodic sound. "Perhaps both. I'm Luca." She hesitated for a moment before replying, "Isabella. Just Isabella." He pressed, his eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to piece together a puzzle. "For now," she said with a small smile. "And you? What brings you to this wedding?" Luca shrugged, the movement effortlessly casual. Business, and perhaps a bit of pleasure. Now that I've met you. Isabella rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress the smirk tugging at her lips. Their conversation flowed naturally, the hours slipping by unnoticed. Luca was charming, enigmatic, and undeniably handsome, yet there was a subtle edge to him, a hint of danger that both intrigued and warned her. As the night wore on, their stolen glances became more frequent, each one charged with an intensity neither could ignore. Isabella felt her pulse quicken every time their eyes met across the crowded room. Luca's dark gaze held hers like a magnet, a silent conversation unfolding between them amidst the revelry. She caught herself smiling at his subtle smirks, the way he tilted his glass slightly in her direction, as if toasting their unspoken connection. Neither dared to approach openly. It was too dangerous to be seen together. Instead, they lingered at opposite ends of the room, their stolen moments cloaked in the safety of distance. Isabella's heart raced with a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension, the thrill of their covert game only heightening her awareness of him. When the evening drew to a close, Luca stood near the exit, his gaze meeting hers one final time. He offered a slow, deliberate nod, a promise etched in the slight curve of his lips. Isabella clutched her shawl tighter, feeling the ache of longing as he disappeared into the night. Something about him felt different, significant, but she brushed the thought aside, reminding herself that their worlds were too complicated for fairy tale endings. The revelation. Luca DeLuca couldn't get her out of his mind. Days turned into a week, and he found himself obsessively replaying their encounter. Isabella. Who was she? She had been careful with her words, revealing little about herself. Yet there was a fire in her eyes, a strength that intrigued him, an elegance women of her age shouldn't have. He began asking discreet questions, using his network to trace her identity. It wasn't long before he uncovered the truth. Isabella Rossi. The name sent a jolt through him, freezing him in place. She wasn't just a beautiful enigma. She was the daughter of Vittorio Rossi, his family's fiercest rival. The DeLucas and the Rossis had been locked in a bitter feud for decades, their blood-stained history marked by betrayal, assassinations, and violence that shaped their legacies. The severity of the revelation hit him like a tidal wave. The woman who had captivated him was part of a family responsible for the deaths of his kin. Luca's breath hitched as he wrestled with the implications. His initial shock gave way to a storm of emotions, fury, confusion, and an undeniable pull toward her that refused to be silenced. He couldn't deny the connection he'd felt with her, nor could he ignore the possibilities her identity presented. Was this fate's twisted way of offering a truce? Or was it a trap, a cruel game orchestrated by the universe? The escape. Isabella's routine had returned to normal, though her thoughts often drifted to Luca. She had tried to push him from her mind, reminding herself of the danger that came with any romantic entanglement in her world. But his image lingered, a persistent ghost haunting her thoughts. She was in her office when the message came, a single red rose and a card bearing a simple message. Dinner. The address listed was an upscale restaurant in the heart of the city. No signature, but she didn't need one. Isabella's heart skipped a beat as she held the card in her trembling fingers, her lips curving into an involuntary smile. Her mind raced with a mix of anticipation and exhilaration. She read the message again, savoring the simplicity and the mystery. A warmth spread through her chest, and she couldn't help but let out a small, giddy laugh. The rose's delicate scent filled her office, a tantalizing promise of what was to come. It was as if the world outside her window had momentarily faded, leaving only the thrilling possibility of the evening ahead. For the first time in what felt like ages, she felt truly alive, her mind buzzing with curiosity and excitement. Curiosity won out over caution as she debated her response. In the end, curiosity won. That evening, she arrived at the restaurant, her heart pounding as she stepped inside. Luca was waiting, his presence commanding even in the elegant setting. "You came," he said, standing to greet her. His smile was genuine, but she could see the tension in his posture. "I'm not sure why," she admitted as she sat down, "but I'm here." Their conversation was guarded at first, both of them skirting around the truth. But as the evening progressed, the walls began to crumble. Luca's charm was disarming, his wit and intelligence captivating. For a moment, it was easy to forget who they were. But the illusion shattered when Luca leaned forward, his expression serious. "I know who you are, Isabella," he began, his voice steady but low, "and you deserve to know who I am too. My name is Luca de Luca, my family and yours. We have a history, one marked by blood and betrayal. I know what you might think of me knowing that, but I'm not here as their emissary. I'm here as a man who can't seem to stay away from you." Her blood ran cold. She stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deceit. "You don't know me, Luca. Not really." "Then let me," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I don't care about the feud between our families. All I know is that I want to be with you." Isabella's heart ached at his words, but she couldn't ignore the reality of their situation. As a woman, and more importantly, a daughter of the Rossi family, her choices were scrutinized more harshly, her actions weighed with consequences. She had little control over it. "It's not that simple," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly as doubt crept in. Could she defy her family, her legacy, and all the expectations thrust upon her for the sake of her heart? Her mind raced with the potential fallout. Yet, the thought of walking away from Luca felt equally unbearable. "It could be," he insisted, "if we're willing to fight for it." The fallout. Their relationship unfolded in secret, each stolen moment tinged with the fear of discovery. They met in places no one would suspect, a rooftop under the cover of night, where Luca spread a blanket and lit a few candles to create a makeshift haven for them, an abandoned warehouse transformed with strings of twinkling lights, and a table set for two, where he presented her with her favorite wine. These romantic gestures were Luca's way of defying the darkness of their world, creating pockets of beauty and intimacy amidst the danger. They exchanged hurried whispers in shadowed corners, shared fleeting touches when no one was looking, and sent cryptic messages that only they could decipher. The thrill of secrecy only deepened their bond, but it also heightened the risk. Each meeting carried the weight of potential disaster. Their fragile world came crashing down one fateful night. Isabella and Luca were in a secluded villa, hidden away from prying eyes. They had stolen a moment to be together, unaware that Vittorio Rossi had followed the trail of whispers and suspicions. Bursting into the room, his fury was palpable, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. "You dare defy me," Vittorio's voice thundered, making the walls shake with him. Isabella stepped in front of Luca, her voice steady despite her fear. "I love him, father. Nothing you do will change that." Vittorio's eyes burned with anger, but beneath it lay a flicker of something else. Hurt, perhaps, or disbelief. "You've chosen your side, Isabella. You've chosen betrayal." Luca stood his ground, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides. "I'm not here to harm her or your family, but I won't walk away from her." The room seemed to hold its breath as the confrontation reached its peak. Vittorio's men surged forward before Luca could react, their fists connecting with brutal precision. Isabella's scream pierced the air as she watched Luca fall under the force of their blows, blood smearing his face. She struggled against her father's grip, tears streaming down her face. "Stop it!" she cried, her voice breaking. "Please, stop!" But Vittorio was unmoved, his expression cold and unyielding. "You've brought this on yourself, Isabella. You have no idea the chaos this could unleash." Luca, battered but defiant, tried to push himself to his knees, his gaze locking with Isabella's. "I'm not giving up on you," he managed, his voice hoarse but resolute. Vittorio's men dragged him out of the room, leaving Isabella sobbing and desperate. Vittorio turned to her, his voice like ice. "You will stay here until you understand the gravity of your actions. You are not to leave this house." He ordered the doors locked, placing guards at every exit. Isabella was effectively a prisoner in her own home, her heart shattering with each passing moment. She paced the confines of her gilded cage, her mind racing with plans for escape and desperate hope for Luca's safety. The twist. Days turned into weeks with Isabella confined to the estate, her only solace the garden where she was allowed to walk under watchful eyes. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, she found herself standing among the roses, their scent bittersweet. A figure emerged from the shadows, his movements silent and deliberate. Her breath caught as she recognized Luca, his face still bearing the marks of their last encounter, but his eyes as fierce and determined as ever. "Luca," she whispered, glancing nervously at the guard stationed at a distance. He stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. "I don't have much time, Isabella. I need to know, are you coming with me or are you staying?" Her heart raced, the weight of his words pressing on her chest. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked into his, the love and desperation reflected there, tearing at her resolve. She stepped closer to him, her trembling hand reaching for his. "I'm coming with you," she whispered, her voice filled with conviction and longing. Luca's expression softened, relief washing over his battered features. Without another word, he cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away a stray tear. The world around them seemed to disappear as he leaned in, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was tender and fierce all at once. It was their first kiss, a culmination of every stolen glance, every whispered word, and every impossible dream. The sweetness of the moment clashed with the danger that loomed, making it all the more profound. "We have to move now," Luca murmured against her lips. Together they navigated the shadows of the garden, their hearts pounding in unison. Every step felt like a gamble, each shadow a potential betrayal. Luca's careful planning guided them past the guards, a faint whistle to draw one away, a deft maneuver behind hedges to avoid another. Isabella's breath hitched as the beam of a flashlight swept dangerously close, illuminating the fear and exhilaration in her eyes. Luca squeezed her hand reassuringly, his grip firm and steady, despite the tension crackling around them. At last, they reached the perimeter, where a low whistle from Luca signaled the waiting car. The adrenaline coursing through her veins made every moment sharper, the victory of their escape intoxicating. As they slipped into the safety of the vehicle, Isabella felt a surge of adrenaline and freedom she hadn't known in years. They reached the car, and Luca opened the door for her before sliding into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and they sped away, the estate fading into the distance. Isabella glanced back once, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what she was leaving behind. Yet, when she turned to Luca and saw the determination in his eyes, she felt a spark of hope. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. "Somewhere they can't find us," he replied. "As long as we're together, that's all that matters." Isabella reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to smile. Their journey was just beginning, fraught with uncertainty and peril. But they would face it together, bound by a love that had defied everything against them. The cliffhanger. As the car sped through the winding roads, Isabella's mind raced with questions. Where would they go? How long could they stay hidden? And what would happen when their families discovered they were gone? But before she could voice her concerns, Luca's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. "What is it?" Isabella asked, her voice tinged with worry. Luca hesitated, then handed her the phone. On the screen was a message from an unknown number. "You can run, but you can't hide. We're coming for you." Isabella's heart sank. The message was unsigned, but she didn't need a name to know who it was from. Their families had already found them. Luca's jaw tightened as he gripped the steering wheel. "We'll figure this out," he said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Together." Isabella nodded, her resolve hardening. They had come too far to turn back now. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it, together.